I am going to talk to you about why we have created specific child development guidance for autistic children and what the benefit of that might be. Before I do that, I'm going to briefly define what we mean by diverse pathways and what we mean by a divergent pathway. So, the diverse pathways, as you have likely seen on other pages on this website, is the umbrella term that we use for our project and our collective. We, as a collective, recognize that every child is traveling down their own unique developmental pathway. And while there may be crossover and similarities in development, we also know that children have their own distinct experiences across their lifespan and they are influenced by a huge range of factors. We reject the idea that we can categorize, rank, and sort our children into being typical or normal or abnormal and special educational needs. As educators, parents, carers, and specialists, we wanted to bring to you a perspective that invites you to honour all developmental experiences as meaningful and valid as part of a child's lived experience. In addition to this, as humans, it is entirely expected that we will face challenge and we will have adversity and we might have areas of need across our lifespan. We do not believe that these differences, these challenges, these struggles should be pathologized. We do not believe that our children should be viewed as broken because they have a lifelong developmental difference and or disability. And so diverse pathways is literally about expanding that viewpoint. Now, as part of our collective, we wanted to look at the idea that if you have a particular developmental experience, for example, you might be dyslexic, you might be autistic, you might be dyspraxic, you might be Down syndrome, you might be deaf, you might have a mobility difference, how do we ensure that those developmental pathways are recognized as valid? So, if, for example, you are autistic, rather than being viewed as only symptomatic or being viewed as disordered, what would happen if we thought about those children as being on their own autistic developmental pathway or a neurodivergent pathway? And so, what we created is the umbrella term of diverse pathways, which recognizes all children's development. And a divergent pathway is our attempt to create new knowledge and to actually bring into the mainstream knowledge that already exists about autistic development, and bringing that into a space where we start to reframe our thinking about what it is to be autistic. Now, you might be thinking, why have you started with autism? We have started with autism because we know that there are many children in our early childhood settings that have this neurodevelopmental experience. I myself, as the founder and leader of this project, have lived experience. I am autistic. And so we drew on actually, where does our knowledge base sit as a collective? And it spans way beyond autism as well. But because of the prevalence of autism, we thought that this was a good place to start. But we recognize entirely that there are many different other neurodevelopmental experiences and disabilities within our early childhood spaces. So the divergent pathway is our attempt at creating a framework that looks at autistic development through a strengths led and affirming, but also a neutral lens. So we have created different developmental insights in order to learn more about what it is to be autistic in your developmental experience. For our divergent pathway for autistic child development, we reject the idea of milestones because milestones, in their technical definition, are a race from A to B and the quickest is the bestest. And we do not believe that this is how we should be describing our children's lived experiences and developmental experiences. What we have coined is the term developmental insights. And developmental insights are essentially about recognizing that we each interpret a child's development differently based on our own experiences. So when a parent and an educator are sitting together and they're talking about a child, they are um, bringing together their developmental insights. They are making sense of the child in front of them in order to meet that child where they are at. So, we have created or are creating free developmental insights for autistic child development. The first one has already been published and it is out there in the world and being used and utilized. So, we have autistic play patterns. Our next one, which is coming in 2026, is autistic communication identities, where we look at all the different ways our autistic children might communicate. And then our third one is energy, rest, and regulation rhythms. So, really thinking about how our children develop regulation capacity, but also thinking about their well being, their sensory and embodied experiences, and how they develop an understanding of how it feels to be them. So, we are creating free developmental insights, which should then practically help you to really connect with your autistic children in practice. Now, as I said, we have started with autistic development, but we are creating this framework because we would love to see other neurodevelopmental experiences and disabilities being represented through this framework. So, if this is something you are interested in, or you have personal or lived experience of another neurodevelopmental experience or disability, please do get in touch with us.